Hi, my name is Carolyn Klauba. I'm the Stewardship Program Coordinator for the Sourlands Conservancy. Today I'm here with Juanita Hummel from the Washington Crossing Audubon Society, and she's going to tell us about a project that they're doing in the Sourlands.
Hi, I'm Juanita. I'm an avid birder and have been for over 40 years, and I presently serve on the board of Washington Crossing Audubon. That's an organization that promotes the welfare of birds and their habitats here in our local area. We're a local chapter of the National Audubon Society, and we serve an area that includes the Sourlands, and many of our projects are done here in the Sourlands because they do have such great bird habitat. We also have a fund that allows us to give grants to local conservation nonprofits who are interested in preserving and restoring habitats for birds. Today I'd like to talk about a bird that is highly dependent on the type of habitat that we have here in the Sourlands, and that is really only living here in the Sourlands because there's this big protected contiguous area of deep woods. That bird is the broad-winged hawk, and it's numerous in other areas, but here in New Jersey, it has become, it's actually listed on the New Jersey Endangered and Threatened Species list as a species of special concern, and that's mostly because of loss of habitat in much of the area. And it's only here in the Sourlands because we have protected that habitat. So it's just an illustration of why habitat protection is important to certain species of birds. The broad-winged hawk is a small to medium-sized hawk. I have a picture of an adult that I can show you here. It is a forest hawk, so it lives in the forest, nests in the forest, and hunts in the forest, finds its food in the forest under the canopy. It is migratory, so it spends most of the winter in Mexico, Central and South America, and then comes here in the spring in April to breed. And when the birds first arrive in the spring, usually around mid-April, they spend a lot of time. Our pair, we've been living here for 36 years, and we've had a pair breeding in this area every year, and probably since before we arrived. When they arrive, they seem to like this area back here. As you can see, this is typical Sourland habitat with lots of diabase boulders and a large assortment of mature deciduous trees, maple, oak, hickory, beech, some birch, tulip trees, all kinds of things that form a thick canopy. That is something that the many birds like, including the broad-winged hawks. And the birds seem to like this area in our front yard for hunting, and a lot of courtship and mating activity goes on here too in this particular area. And so a lot of baby broad-winged hawks had their start somewhere in the woods behind me. However, when it comes time to nest, they have a different location that they prefer. That's right in the park next door, and we can go there next.
Over here, has the decline in ash affected their breeding behavior or feeding behavior?
Yes, in fact it has, but fortunately, since there are so many other species of trees that they would consider using, basically any deciduous tree will do, it has not caused them to leave, although another event that happened earlier this spring did, and I will tell you more about that later. So broad-winged hawks like this kind of area. This is a parking lot for the nature preserve next door to me, and they like this kind of opening in the woods to nest in. They will typically nest in one of these large trees in a crotch about 2/3 of the way up, and in fact there has been a bird breeding in this area right behind me for at least the past 4 or 5 years. We had a pair of birds, not sure if they're the same birds or different birds each time, but one pair of breeding birds successfully raising chicks right in the area behind me. And as you can see, this is an area used by humans, so it is somewhat sensitive, and as long as the level of human activity is kept to a minimum, the birds will be okay with that. but they have limited tolerance. They like to nest in the forest. They like to be near water. We have streams nearby. We have a big vernal pool not too far up the trail here, which produces masses of frogs and toads every year, one of their favorite foods. The rocks serve as hibernacula and breeding places also for snakes. We have water snakes, milk snakes, garter snakes, and they really enjoy a good snack of snake, which they will peel like a banana before eating it. And I've seen them carrying snakes from various parts of the woods to their nest to share with their babies, so it's kind of an interesting diet. They also will eat large insects, such as cicadas. And during the last cicada emergence, I had one in my yard. It was sitting on the edge of the forest in the back every morning, picking up the cicadas as they emerged from underground. And I thought it was kind of sad because these cicadas have been living underground for 17 years. They emerge into the freedom and light and are immediately end up in the stomach of a broad-winged hawk, but they do enjoy them very much. So everything they need is here. I have a picture of, that I can show you of a broad-winged female on her nest in one of these trees behind me. Well, actually the tree that she nested in that year is now gone. It was an ash, and so they will often reuse nests when they come back in the spring if they can, but this nest is no longer there because the tree is no longer there. However, they did find another tree to their liking, and breeding went on as usual. And I do have a picture of a chick from that nest. And I also have a picture of one of the adults. I believe it's the female when she was perched, the adult bird. So you can see the difference between the adult and the chick when she was perched in our yard. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these birds like to be away from human habitation. And one of the things that happened in the spring was the COVID virus, which caused a shutdown of all the county parks here in New Jersey for a period of time. And they opened up again on April 29th, which, as it happens, was exactly the point in time when these birds were planning on nesting. They had found their tree. They were bringing sticks to it, and then suddenly there was a massive influx of people, more people than I've ever seen in this park before, and they were all coming into this parking area. There was, as you can see, it's a very small parking area, only holds a few cars. There was just too much activity, and so the birds left. Fortunately, they did not go too far. They went across this road where we have another big contiguous area of forest called the Sourlands Ecosystem Reserve. And they did successfully raise their babies this year. They just recently fledged, and I have some pictures of one of those chicks to show you. You can see it's very small and fluffy, and it doesn't have the same plumage as the adult. And in this picture, you can see what look like heart-shaped markings on the breast of the bird, which I think is kind of cute.
So Juanita, you had told me that these birds are threatened. How many birds are there in this region and or in the Sourlands in general?
Well, that's a good question. While the birds are numerous elsewhere in Canada and other parts of the eastern United States where there's still forests, in New Jersey there are very few, because in fact the best place to see them, certainly in central New Jersey, is right here in the Sourlands. Some of the breeding studies that we've done in the Sourlands, either through bigger scientific projects or as a result of some of the studies we've done at Washington Crossing Audubon at the request of land managers to help them manage habitats, have brought us to believe that there are probably only 3 or 4 pairs, maybe as many as 5 pairs that are breeding here in this area and within, say, a 2 or 3 mile radius of this area in the Sourlands. So that's all that's left here in central New Jersey. Before the forests were cut down here, there used to be a lot more, I'm sure, because the habitat is perfect for them. But they do need that habitat, and that's why conservation organizations and stewardship of forests, such as that being done by the Sourland Conservancy, is really, really important to many species, including this one.
What would be a good first stepping stone for them? Would it be getting involved in a bird count or doing some stewardship on their property or in a park? What would you suggest would be the best way to get started?
Well, there are a number of ways in which you can get involved with this kind of thing. Certainly, you can go to our website, WashingtonCrossingAudubon.org, and find out how you can learn more about birds to begin with. And also join us. We do walks when we can. Hopefully we're going to be starting in the fall, which beginners are welcome to come and learn more about where birds live and how they live and the habitats in which they live. You can, certainly I would urge you to join the Sourland Conservancy in their stewardship efforts. They can give you a lot of tips. If you want to just start in your own backyard, removing invasive plants, putting in native plants for pollinators. All of nature is connected, so those plants that you might plant for butterflies, they are also producing, the butterflies will be producing caterpillars that are later used by birds for food, to eat themselves or to feed their young. So everything that you do in looking after the land and making sure that get rid of your lawn, that's a good start. Plant something else, plant native plants. Even small efforts like that, taken together when a lot of people are doing them, can have a big impact and can be helpful to birds and to people that live with those birds. The other thing I would say is, if you're in a place like this, like the Sourland Preserve, learn to be a sensitive user of the habitat that other wildlife is using, and try to limit your impact. That will be very helpful. And then we won't have to have birds leaving because there's too much human activity surrounding them.